Hi, my name is Lara. Welcome to my channel, Inner Goddess Guidance. I created this channel for women, mostly divine feminines on the twin flame path, or really anybody who is doing the work to self-heal on a path to self-mastery. I believe that we're all in charge of our own healing process and that it's an incredible journey during our lifetime. And that at some point we recognize that the journey is really in our own hands. And in many ways, I should say, it's in many ways in our own hands, at least in terms of how we navigate. And so our own healing process is in our own hands. And how we approach that is important. So I created this channel to assist you using my own tools from a long time of teaching, personal coaching, and then my own experiences over the past 2 years on my own healing journey. So I created a project recently that I've oriented the videos towards, and this will be the second in that series. Today the topic is awakening. The project, for those of you who are watching this for the first time, is a part of a healing process by which each person makes their own individual oracle card deck. In the process of doing that, we really reflect deeply on concepts that are important in self-healing and self-mastery. As we do our own cards and create them, I've created a space on Facebook that the group of us can not only discuss more deeply each concept, but then share the images, the artwork that we're creating for our own oracle cards. Eventually, when enough are created, 65 in total, we'll select from our individual images to create a collective deck that can then be used to help other people heal on their journey. So I wanted to share some of the things that were created in the group with permission because they were so beautiful. So from the first topic was surrender, and the conversation on the Facebook group was amazing, deep, and profound. And I think each person who participated was able to delve deeper into their own understanding of surrender in their own life and surrender for what they're currently going through. I know that that was true for me. So I wanted to share a couple of the creations, the cards, the images so far. This is Gina's creation. Bring it back for surrender. And she wrote an absolutely beautiful explanation to go along with why she chose the tree during autumn, because it surrenders so willingly its leaves, knowing, of course, that it will, having faith that the growth comes back again. And then all the images of surrendering in this sort of beautiful manner. There's a woman in the top of the tree leaning back with her hair in the tree, and then the small child. It almost looks to me like the divine is releasing that child, and the child is just like falling with joy with her hands up. But then all these other images as well. And so Gina, and there's some images I love that are really, really tiny. Like there's a woman who's naked. She's going out into the sea with her arms out. And there's another picture of a body, and I think it is also a woman. It could be a man, but I can't really tell, and it's not important anyway, in a river floating. And I very much identify with this kind of surrender, surrendering to the river, surrendering to my own capacity to be buoyant and to be held in that river. Anyway, beautiful, beautiful artwork. And she like I said, her explanation was quite beautiful as well. So I thank her, Gina, for allowing me to use that in this and use it as an example. And then another person, Nancy, did another kind of digital artwork. And hers is, again, has a beautiful explanation to go with it. And so even though they're both digital artwork, they turned out quite differently. And I got to tell you, I'm so impressed. I've never really explored digital artwork, but it's really inspired me to play around with digital artwork because it's much, I don't know, there's something that is not only creative about it, but then for me, as somebody who's always been limited in my definition of what I could quote unquote draw or paint or create without putting a whole lot of effort into it. I'm thinking that might be a way that I can sort of feel proud of what I create and maybe, you know, explore some boundaries that I are self-limited that I put on myself because I'm so judgmental of my own artwork, which again is something to let go, surrender, right? I need to judge my artwork. And it's not really important that it be, you know, like heavy, deep, and real artwork. It can just be sort of fun. And that's kind of my approach when it came to my card. So I will share my card with you and you'll see an immediate difference. My card was just a free flow of, I again was trying to play on the idea of water and the spiraling and the things changing, but succumbing to that, succumbing to the flow, succumbing to or surrendering to that current of where life is going. So surrender was the topic for the last video. And this video, I took a poll in the Facebook group and it was determined that our new topic would be awakening. Oddly enough, I was not able to really receive some of the divine inspiration that I've been receiving on a regular basis on that topic. I had already done a video on awakening because it was requested by some other viewers. And then for whatever reason, that didn't post either. Or I didn't feel pushed to post it, so I didn't. And I've been reflecting on why that might be. First of all, I think awakening is a very personal process. You know what? A lot of us have gone through different kinds of awakening, and I think that we are in a constant sort of process of awakening. The same way we go to bed each night and reawaken in the morning. Throughout our lives, we'll go through moments where we feel an awakening, in part because for me, an awakening is almost like a paradigm shift. An awakening happens, and when it does, everything the way that I've understand it shifts. So I might look back on my past with a new understanding that shifts the way I perceive my past. I might be able to perceive my past and things that happened in a more accepting way. Or like I see the divine plan in it. I understand why maybe some things had to happen the way they did, whereas at the time I didn't understand and I may have resisted them. But when I awaken and I look back, I have a new perspective and it opens, my eyes have been opened. As a part of the awakening, my eyes have been opened and I then see things differently. I understand in retrospect and can gain a better clarity that I didn't have at the time. I think that for me, an awakening, like my awakening, when I consider my awakening to this journey, the twin flame divine feminine journey, was what I would call a rude awakening. It was an abrupt awakening. It was the divine slapping me literally upside the face and me ending up feeling like I was completely lost in that moment of time. And the lost moment didn't stretch out for too long. It wasn't a dark night of the soul that went on and on. It was very brief, it was abrupt, and it was transformative. So I think that is another word I associate with awakening is this transformational experience that then alters your path. So for me, my awakening to this journey was, like I said, super abrupt. And what happened for me was that everything I was afraid of was served up for me on a silver platter. And it was like a test. It was like the divine was saying, okay, you said this was your worst fear, and now what are you going to do? I just gave it to you. Are you going to survive it? And I remember the next day, after, maybe a 12-hour period of time, when I literally awakened in the morning. That's when I had my awakening. And I could see with new eyes that I was going to be okay. I received a very clear message, which is another part of awakening. Awakening is such a connection to the divine, to your spiritual path, to your soul purpose, that a lot of us, after we go through an awakening, start to have more spiritual experiences, more connection to the divine, and to understanding that there's divine purpose or a divine plan. And that can happen through that rude awakening. And for me, I remember associating almost immediately with a quote that I heard from Joseph Campbell, which is that it's something like this. I wish I had it perfectly, but it's in the cave you fear to enter lies the treasure you seek. And I remember describing my awakening to other people and saying it was like I went into the cave and I thought that I would be eaten alive by the dragon. But I was forced to go into the cave. And when I did, when I awakened the next morning, what I discovered was there was light in the cave. And that there was no dragon, that I had made that up, and that actually what was in the cave was my own power. That there was a gem, he says, lies the treasure you seek. And for me, it was like, I got the image of Raiders of the Lost Ark or something, where they go in and there's the gem glowing. And that this was my talisman. This was my power. And I went in and I picked it up. And I was like, wow, I was afraid to come in here because I thought there was a big dragon sort of guarding that. But it was all in my mind. There was nothing there. And that was was passing through a threshold, a spiritual experience that enabled me to open up to my own gifts in some way, to my own power. And in doing that, I recognized that I was not a victim of my life. That in fact, every single thing that had happened in my life that I had perceived from the perspective, perhaps, of a victim, was actually a blessing. And that I had gained certain knowledge and skills and abilities and insights and the ability to empathize. And all of that was my treasure. And so for me in the awakening, what happened was when that event was over, there was a fundamental shift of where I thought I was headed in my life and what I thought my life was about, to a new understanding and awareness of everything that had already passed, and a profound appreciation for where I currently was, and then setting a new course for possibilities that I had never even entertained before. And that awakening was fundamentally essential to where I'm at right now. And therefore, I don't regret any single thing, even though it was quite painful to experience. But the next day, the crazy thing is that it was also quite joyful. I felt like I was floating on air in some cases. And all of this opened up for me. I kept hearing love warrior, I'm a love warrior, and this is not your fault. And I don't know, it was a crazy and beautiful experience. So that for me is awakening. And I think why I was hesitant to make the video and why Spirit wasn't urging me or giving me downloads or anything is that a person's awakening is their own. I think there might be some components of awakening that are similar, but I think some people don't have to go through that awakening by like an abrupt awakening or quote unquote rude awakening. I don't think they have to be slapped upside the head by the divine to go through it. I think, awakenings can happen when you're walking in nature. They can happen when you have a baby or in a tender moment, or when you see something or witness something. So I think that everybody's awakening is different. And I also believe that for me, I'm almost always in a constant process now of continuing to reawaken. It's an awakening that is like every day when I literally wake up from my dream state, that I am reawakening to what's unfolding in front of me. So I think when you're considering awakening today for yourself, you might want to reflect back on moments that you have felt that you awakened and what was happening for you. Did you have a fundamental shift as you retrospectively from that point look back on your life? Did you shift your perspective on your future and where your path was headed? Did you in some ways fundamentally shift your perspective of who you were and what you're capable of? Did you open up and connect to capacities, talents, gifts, abilities that you didn't know you had? Or did you in some ways reconnect with some of those things that you had maybe when you were younger? When I was younger, I was just a little girl and I used to talk to the divine. I was about 3 or 4 and my mom would write them down, things that I would say, conversations that I was having with God. So, I've always done that in my life. I just didn't know. I wasn't awakened to the fact that that was a voice from a bigger voice than myself. I mean, I may have known that as a little kid, but as I grew, I just thought it was my internal voice, my higher self voice, my conscience guiding me. And even though sometimes I would still hear these messages that were external, that I knew were external, I doubted it. And so I would just like say, "Oh, Lara, you're just talking to the voices in your head, But now I know differently. And And the awakening was very much a part of me beginning to expand and allow and receive those messages from the divine. And you may, I think a lot of people do have experiences like that. So that's the message today. I hope that you have fun considering awakening. I did look up poems of awakening. I found a beautiful book that I want to order that is a collection of poems all about awakening, but I didn't have time to get it for this. So maybe on another video I'll share one of those poems. There is a beautiful Rumi poem about awakening. And you know, Rumi did talk about the beloved, but Rumi was in many instances not talking about another person. He was talking about his relationship with the divine beloved. And so if you want to look up the Rumi poem, it's called The Awakening or Awakening, and it's quite beautiful. And then I looked up all kinds of songs about awakening, and I just didn't find any that I felt like were encapsulated enough to like share it with you. And I think the reason why is because the job is for us individual to reflect on our own awakenings and what was happening for us. So that when we add that into our oracle deck, we draw that card awakening, we can ask ourselves, do I recognize a current situation that's calling for me to make a similar fundamental shift? Almost like the divine giving you a little pre-warning. Hey, if you can take the message that you just pulled and look at your life and sort of find out, is there a spot you need to sort of, are you awakening? Can you focus on that and see what it is you need to learn or understand there? What's the jewel that you need to go into the cave and claim? Or, and I just lost my train of thought. Or am I going to have to give you a rude awakening? That's what I was thinking. So like when you pull it from the oracle, it might be a way to awaken in a more gentle fashion. Because I really don't like the rude awakenings. They're really quite painful. Even if in retrospect I can laugh about it. Because it's pretty funny. There's aspects that are pretty funny about my awakening and my behavior that night. So that's it. Let's draw, call in spirit, and then draw a goddess oracle card of the day. Thank you, Gina and Nancy, for letting me share your cards. So, dear spirit of the universe, of love and light, please be with us in this time and place as we focus our collective intention on gaining wisdom and guidance for our journey toward healing and self-mastery. We ask for open hearts and minds to receive the messages that will serve our highest and best good in the service of healthy love in all forms. With deep gratitude, thank you. So, Amy Sophia Marashinsky and Harana Janto came up with this beautiful oracle of the goddess oracle. So let's see. Spirit, please give us one goddess energy that's working with us today that can advise us or guide us, perhaps about awakening, or anything we should maybe awaken to today. Goddess trying to awaken something in us. Okay, I just have to stop for a second because I got a total flash. When I was a little girl, I think I was like 2, maybe 3, quite young, my grandparents would come and visit. And my grandpa tells the story that, you know how kids wake up so early in the morning, right? And I just loved hanging out with him. And so I would, you know, make my way down the stairs to find him in bed. And then I'd climb up on the bed and I would wake him up by actually pulling his eyes open and saying, "Hey, Grandpa, you awake?" Yeah, I don't know why that came, but there must be a reason for it. So, yeah, it's a beautiful memory. We have one goddess oracle energy message. Thank you, Spirit. Well, we've had this one before. Interesting. Sekhmet, anger and rage. I gotta tell you, this is something that I've truly been working on lately. Anger and rage. Sekhmet. I think actually very strong emotions like anger and rage can actually awaken you. You know, you become awakened to feelings maybe you weren't confronting before, potential inside of you. You awaken to things that trigger you. You awaken to past things in your life that need healing. When you feel that kind of strong emotion. And yeah, powerful, powerful, powerful emotion. And I have, at least in my life, really judged that anger is bad. And I think a lot of women have. I think anger is no better or worse than any other emotion. It has a more destructive quality, but so does jealousy. So does desire. Those things also have destructive capacities, and they can be incredibly powerful too. Desire can be an incredibly powerful emotion that has destructive tendencies and good tendencies. So anger is just an emotion, right? Just another one. It depends on how we kind of use it or channel it or what we learn from it. It's there to teach us something. Anger and rage, Sekhmet. I burn and fume and shoot daggers from my eyes. I erupt and roar, though you've not pulled my tail. My edges are sharp and I cut deep. My energy is strong and fierce, and my displeasure needs to be expressed. Though sometimes mild, I can be very intense. Once incited, I am difficult to put out. I am always appropriate, always needed. Don't try to get rid of me. I need to be acknowledged and heard. I am anger. Sekhmet, the lion-headed Egyptian sun goddess, is known as the destructive aspect of the sun. Vowing to destroy all humanity in a fit of rage, she went on a killing spree. She was stopped by the intervention of Ra, the high god, who put huge vats of beer mixed with pomegranate juice in her path. Mysticking, for it was human blood. Oh, mysticking. Oh my God. Wow. I totally read it as if it was the name of a new god or something. Okay, you ready for this? Mistaking it for human blood, Sekhmet consumed the drink and became intoxicated. When she woke up, her rage was gone. Red in this painting signifies Sekhmet's scorching, smoldering nature. Oh my God, that is too funny. Mr. King. Oh, please. Sekhmet leaps into your life to help you face your anger. Does anger, yours or someone else's, make you feel uncomfortable? Do you fear your anger because you were taught anger isn't nice? Or that expressing anger is ugly? Have you repressed or disconnected from it so much that you don't know how to express it now? Perhaps you've gone beyond anger to rage. Rage is accumulated anger gone out of control. Perhaps you're in a slow boil all the time and don't know how to take the pot from the fire. Sekhmet says our anger is part of our power as women. Don't give away your anger. Learn to express it in a way that can be heard. Learn to transform it so it empowers and energizes you. Your path to wholeness will be more vital when you make anger your ally. Yep. Well, thank you, Spirit, and thank you, Sekhmet, for bringing us that message that we can reflect on today. I'm still really working on this, and you might be too. Because in a way, I don't want to hold on to anger, and I love the way that it's said in the message that repressed anger builds into rage. So we kind of like need to let it out at like a like a teapot needs to have a release every now and then, but not in a way that's necessarily destructive to others, but in a way that informs us and informs others. And I think, like I mentioned the last time it came out, it's about boundaries. You know, you really do have a right. Like, I think about people who've been through hard situations where they may have literally been victimized in their life. And sometimes when we, especially if we were victimized as children, one of the things that we do is we disassociate from whatever feeling that we're having in order to self-preserve. I mean, it's very, very natural to disassociate from your body and to disassociate from feelings. And so then we become adults who need to go back and reclaim those parts of ourselves, kind of like reconnect, reintegrate. If we detached from our bodies, for example, we need to accept our bodies back. We need to forgive our bodies. We need to allow our bodies back in. And if we detached from emotions because in whatever moment of crisis, let's call it, or trauma, we disconnected from an emotion like anger because we weren't allowed to express it, then we kind of need to go back and claim that too. And that's not to necessarily overindulge it, it's to acknowledge it, because otherwise it's sitting down there as almost like a disembodied part of us. So to allow it, to claim it, because I think, especially I'm thinking about some things that I experienced as a child that I should have been angry about, but never allowed myself to be angry about, because I was protecting people involved, because I also loved them. And so in retrospect, as I look back now, you know, there's a part of me, I think that if I were to take some time and go back in and process it, which is something we can do during coaching, by the way. So if this is something that comes up for you and you'd like a personal session, even a half an hour can be very helpful in this process. So to take some time to sort of safely, in a safe environment, go back in and reconnect with what I would call your higher self now, that needs to give permission to child in you to express the anger that wasn't allowed to be expressed to the person, even just energetically. Because what happened for me is that then I turned that into self-blame and hurt. And that is why in relationships afterwards, when I would legitimately need to be angry, instead of being angry, my response was to be hurt and cry. Because what was being triggered in me, again, was that little girl who was not treated the way she should have been treated. Or, was, there's sort of a, almost like a way it's supposed to happen, right? Between, let's say, parents and kids, or caregivers and kids, or whatever. And if that is breached, and legitimately we should be able to be angry, but we're in a position of being powerless, or being in a position of less power. And then it makes it even more confusing if we love that person, because now we want to be angry, we feel maybe that we should, and we detach from that. And so going forward in our lives, there's a point at which we kind of look back and go, I need to go back in and allow that anger out, not in a destructive way, but in a way that enables it to heal. So thank you, Spirit. I think that was a really powerful message, and I appreciate that you brought it back out, not only for me to make the connections in real time for you, but I have a feeling that's a really important message, not just for me, but for probably a lot of you as well. Okay, let's find out today if there's anything we can surrender to when it comes to an awakening. And by the way, before I put it down, it is a kind of awakening to go back in and allow that to happen. You put it to sleep. See, if we can't process our anger in a healthy way, then we sort of put that part of us to sleep. So it can we safely go in and like wake it up in a loving way, like the little girl climbing on her grandpa's bed and opening his eyes. Hey, hey, hi, anger. I know you're in there. Let's safely come out here and allow some work to be done, and allow that to be processed so that we can reintegrate and move forward. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, let's find out about what we can surrender. Dear Spirit, please give us one, something we can surrender today, perhaps in our awakening, or maybe surrender to our awakening. Okay. Oh, fabulous. Surrender to creativity. Excuse me. Surrender to creativity. It says, let your imagination soar. Stay open to all creative ideas about how to pursue a dream or solve a problem. Think outside the box, in other words. And hey, did you know one of the wonderful things to sort of get deep into your intuition, to be creative problem solver, is to do something like color. Like these things. I think I have it here. Yeah. Like one of these books. Because you can sort of do a mandala. You could color a mandala like this. And while you're doing that, you're just focused on one color at a time, one thing at a time. And then as you're doing that, you're also freeing up this, you're closing down a little bit your prefrontal cortex that's having to solve problems and organize and do all this executive functioning. And you're calming that, and you're allowing your part of your brain that is connected to your intuition and your creativity and your imagination to come out. And that's where we do think outside of the box and find answers to problems, perhaps, or to approaches to things that we wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And I would suggest, one way to do that might be to create your card, your oracle card on awakening, and explore all different kinds of creativity when it comes to that. Who says it has to be an oracle card? If this is just one way. You don't have to create an oracle deck to follow this entire process and find it useful. So you don't want to do that? Look up the poetry or write a poem or find a song or sing a song or sit down I play piano, sit down at an instrument, think of awakening and allow the music to come forth from you. Make whatever song seems to be coming forth. Dance, move. All different ways to be creative. You could take anger and rage and write a poem about it and process it that way. You could take anger and rage and make a dance about it. Move through it. Allow the movement to take you. You could allow, if you did go through times where you didn't allow anger and rage out, you could put on some music and allow yourself to do that now. Here's the thing. People pay money to go to therapy and do stuff like that. They do. So, and you don't have to. You just give yourself permission. You can do it. Use your creativity. See what happens. Nobody will know. It's you. It's your healing journey. Explore that. Give yourself permission to be your own healer. So that's my message. That's our message. That's spirits and my message for today. I thank you very much for joining me, and I hope this wasn't too long, but wow, for not having much to say, I felt about awakening. Suddenly there was quite a bit to say. I hope that you got something valuable from it. Wherever you are, I hope that you're having a wonderful day. Bye.